So we just got back from Disney and our first experience with Tron Lightcycle Run. So we can't help but talk about this cult sci-fi classic that changed filmmaking twice. We'll discuss the sacrifices fathers make, the impact of digital realms on parental connections, and the weight of inheriting powerful legacies. This is Tatooine Sons.
Hey guys, this is Ashley Cox from Fangirling Over Jesus. At FOJ, we believe in hope and light in the darkness and that you are not alone. We seek to unite and celebrate the intersection of the gospel and our favorite fandoms, and we get to do this through our social media, our podcast devotional, and our cosplay and fashion. And you can find links to all of that through our website, www.fangirlingoverjesus.com, through our social media at Fangirlingoverjesus, wherever you get your podcasts, and on Etsy. See you online.
It's true. All of it.
What is the name of the porg on the Millennium Falcon?
Force is strong in my family.
What do you think his name is? It's a big moment.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Maybe Turbis?
Do or do not. There is no try.
Turbis? Pablo, if you're listening to this live stream, that porg's name is now Turbis. It's a good Star Wars name.
We're not done yet.
These guys recorded an awesome podcast called Tatooine Sons. Everybody was
Tron Lightcycle. What is it?
Tron Lightcycle Run.
Tron Lightcycle Run. Nathan explained the significance of the ... run or whatever.
It's just the / run. It's basically just running a program from usually a website or something like that in coding. So it was just a little
coding inside joke.
Which makes sense because the whole thing is built off of a computer program.
Yeah.
Right? So what do you guys think about Tron Lightcycle Run? I'll start with you. Well, we'll start with you, Sam, since it was basically your whole birthday was built around that ride.
Yeah, that's true. I really liked it. It was a ton of fun.
A ton of fun.
It was definitely the best ride in Disneyland at this point.
That's not Disneyland. That's called Magic Kingdom.
Magic Kingdom. I don't know where that one came from.
I don't either.
I think I was thinking Tomorrowland and mixed that up with Disney.
There you go.
Anyway, definitely best ride at Magic Kingdom, and I know that's going to be like blasphemy for a lot of people because there's a lot of great rides like Haunted Mansion and Big Thunder and Peter Pan.
Pirates of the Caribbean, all that. So,
but I like that ride a lot, just at least for the thrill factor. It's definitely the most thrill factor at that park.
BB Nate, the criticism that we heard going into our first experiences with Tron Lightcycle Run was that it was too short. What are your thoughts on that?
It was short, but I wouldn't say too short. Just people wanted longer, which I guess is a good thing. It means that they want more. I think it was fine. I enjoyed the amount of time it went, and it was fun. Nothing really special about it or being too short or anything, I don't think.
So we got in opening queues, basically. Mm-hmm. First or on 3 days that we were down there, and then we lightning laned and purchased a 9:25 p.m. run. So we actually waited till after the fireworks were over and then jumped in during our hour window of that. Start with you, BB Nate. Night run or day run, which is better?
Night for sure. It just feels more like Tron because there's never really a day cycle in the grid, so it just fit better with the vibe of the grid.
Yeah, and you can appreciate the theming better, you know, because there's that whole superstructure that's all lit up and patterned with the music and stuff. That's really cool that you just can't see when it's, you know, high noon in Florida. You're just not going to see anything like that. It's too bright. So it is really cool to be able to appreciate it at night.
It's definitely a lot of fun. You know, we were driving, Mom and I were driving with a shuttle driver from the resort on Saturday, and he was explaining that, you know, going back to it being a little shorter than people like, that originally it was supposed to take the space as well for, was it Autopia?
Autopia, yeah.
The speedway there, the little kiddie race car thing that's been there since the opening of the park. They were going to remove that, and that the original version of this ride was going to be extended to cover all of that area as well, and it was going to be a longer ride, but lots of traditionalists had some issue with them removing Autopia, and so they pivoted and changed it and made it a shorter ride. So be careful what you ask for; you just might get it. So we haven't talked much about Tron on this. You guys don't really remember much about the original Tron. You've seen it like once, right?
I saw it once, remembered it was pretty boring, and therefore haven't watched it since.
What about you, Nate? Do you remember anything about it?
No. Oh my gosh. I was like maybe 6 or 7 when I watched it, and that's the only time I've watched it. So
I do remember not having ever seen the movie, but having Tron toys. Like your primary, the red character in that, and his Lightcycle. I wouldn't even remember his name. I can remember the actor because he's been in a lot of different things.
Who was it?
I can't remember his name. I just remember what he looks like. But yeah, I remember playing with Tron toys and then not seeing Tron till it came out on like Blu-ray or something and watching it with you guys. I think that was the first time I ever watched Tron. And then you guys were big fans of you guys like Tron Legacy and big fans of what was the TV series?
Tron Uprising.
What was it about Tron Uprising you guys liked so much?
Well, the art style is awesome, at least now.
Animation
Back
style.
then was controversial because
why was that?
Lower frame rates, it's a lot of Spider-Verse feel, but that was back in the early 2010s.
See, it all comes back to the Spider-Verse for us this week.
And so everybody was like, this looks weird, it doesn't work, but visually it was stunning. But it was way ahead of its time, which
just like Tron
fits Tron super well. And now that kind of animation is starting to become
very commonplace.
popular.
Yeah.
Like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie that's doing it later this summer.
Similar.
And Resistance had a very similar type of art style in some ways. And so just the animation style is great. The story is actually really good, dealing with...
ended on a cliffhanger.
It did, and they never finished it. But deals with Tron more than anything, himself, and him kind of trying to recover and heal after the original Tron movie. And then eventually how I guess he becomes... Well, we were going to find out how he becomes Rinsler in Tron Legacy, but we never got to that point. And it's a vigilante story because there's a program that takes up the mantle of Tron after everybody thinks that he's dead, and so becomes this legend, and Tron helps kind of mentor him through all of that, and it's just really an awesome show.
And the main character is voiced by Elijah Wood.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So we keep hoping in vain that they'll do I would even take like a movie, like a quick hour and a half movie to wrap up the loose ends, just so there's some.
What about a comic book that tied it all?
No, I want it
because
animated.
It was the animation style that really made that show unique.
That's the whole thing about Tron Legacy too, is it has such that really unique style that's instantly recognizable. So you can't really replicate that as well in a comic.
So are they or are they not making a Tron 3?
They are supposedly making a Tron 3. They have Jared Leto cast as the lead. They have, well, who knows what's going on with this writer's strike now? It might be put on hold or
everything.
Who knows? But the original building for the Flynn's arcade, the one that was used in Tron Legacy, had the Flynn's sign put back up recently for production. So it seems like we're getting another one, and we have a title for it already too, Tron Ares.
Interesting.
But that's all we really know about it right now. We don't know too much else. We're hoping for some more
trying
stuff
to connect. What Ares could have to do with Tron with that.
It's the god of war is what that is, and
I'm
mythology.
sure that it's going to be
in the Zodiac. It's symbolized by a ram.
Is it?
Yeah, which RAM is tied into computer technology.
Yeah,
random
access. I have a feeling that if they do a third one and it's titled this, it's going to be like an ending battle for the grid, like the grid is collapsing or something, or I don't know. But that would be, I feel like it's going to be an end war.
If anything, I think the success of this ride, and the merch, which I got a lot of merch. There's some cool stuff. All right,
He was just trying to support Tron. That was it. Yeah,
but it's like if I buy everything in the store, will you guys continue season 2 of Tron Uprising? So
no, but we weren't the only ones who spent some good money in that shop. There were constant people buying things for Tron.
It is without a doubt the most popular ride at Magic Kingdom right
absolutely,
now.
And I think it'll have legs for a while. And I think that's a good sign that Disney should continue to put more into this IP. People want this IP. If it's done well, I think that they could really have a success with this story. And
I think they're waiting
in this world
for Tron Legacy to become kind of that cult classic.
It is
like the
already.
original Tron did, yeah.
Because when Tron Legacy came out, people didn't really like it, which is weird because it's actually a really good movie. And now people are starting to enjoy it more and more now that they've given time to kind of forget all of the hate around it, which happens with most movies that are hated at the beginning, like Last Jedi and all that stuff. And eventually everybody will be like, I've loved Tron Legacy since the beginning. They have to make more. Disney, please make more. So I think they're waiting for that.
Well, let's talk about some of the themes specifically in Tron Legacy, as we are, we're more, and most of our listeners, most of you out there are probably much more familiar with other sci-fi and space fantasy movies. Tron Legacy, while many of you have probably watched it, maybe even watched it multiple times, maybe even are big fans of it, these other films are much more significantly discussed, and we've never talked about some of these on this podcast either. So let's have some fun with this. We'll start with you, Sam. Let's talk about the idea of fatherhood in Tron Legacy and some comparisons with another movie, I think it's your all-time favorite.
It is my favorite. Yep.
Interstellar. In Tron Legacy, we witness a very complex father-son relationship between Kevin Flynn and his son Sam. Interestingly enough, with that,
that's why I like the movie so much.
Maybe.
I remember you came back from a business trip not long after the movie came out, and you brought Nate and I. I guess you went to probably somewhere that was near Disney and they had it in the airport, but you got us little identity disc Frisbees.
Yeah.
And I was so confused. I thought you got it personalized because on the box it said Sam. And I was like, no way, you got this. Like, how'd you do that? And you kept trying to explain it to me and I just couldn't gather it. So you're like, yeah, sure. I got it personalized.
Just for you, Sam. Not for Nathan though, which shows you kind of how narcissistic you really were. Anyway, well, there's a lot of, the father-son dynamic is huge in Tron Legacy. That's also heavily, the father-child dynamic is big in Christopher Nolan's Interstellar, where Cooper leaves his daughter Murph behind as he embarks on this space mission to basically find a new place for everybody to
save humanity. It's not
humanity.
that big of a deal. It's all good.
Sam, how do these two films explore the sacrifices fathers make for the greater good?
That's I don't have. They're both very different. I think. Well, there's a lot of. I haven't actually. See, I got to process it because, I would never compare these two movies, ever. So
it's a completely.
It's a weird. Wild.
But the theme is definitely there.
No, it is. I think both fathers start off with a semi-selfish mindset. Cooper. There is a side of him that's like, oh, I can get back to my roots of being a pilot. I can save humanity.
He was an astronaut.
They need me. I'm the one who has to do this, right? Yeah. And this is kind of selfish mindset. Same with Flynn. He's like, I'm creating something here. I'm creating a world. Like, imagine all I can do here. And it was a purely selfish reason that eventually transformed into something greater. He realized in Interstellar that this needs to happen. Humanity really does need me, and I'm going to have to make some sacrifices for that. In his mind, he wasn't ever going to see his daughter again. Kevin Flynn, it is Kevin, right? I just watched this movie. I should know. He started off just creating this world and building it, and then realizing that he screwed up and he has to stay behind in order to save everything, both this world and the outside world, as we find out later in the movie. So they both have similar paths. It's kind of like comparing, a Texas Roadhouse steak to Ruth's Chris. I mean, they're both great in their own right.
Which one is the Texas Roadhouse steak?
That would be Tron. They're both great in their own right, but one is just obviously done a lot better than the other.
Well, what about the relationship though, and the feeling of abandonment that both Sam and Cooper have in these films because their father has left for whatever reason? They don't, they're stuck with the reality of being back in their Earth, having to grow up and live life without their father. And what, compare some of the ideas there.
Yeah, I mean, they both get very jaded in the end. You know, Sam's like, yeah, dad's gone, whatever. I check up on the company every so often, but I don't want to be involved because that was my dad's thing. You know, Murph, she's like, I'm going to, you know, be in the sciences and stuff and do all that. But, you know, she only, you know, creates one of those video logs to her dad once there's that point in the movie where,
spoilers, by the way.
Well, yeah, spoilers.
Yeah.
Where she's the same age as when he left, and at that point, I think it was kind of like the point of no return for her.
For her to start like processing.
Right. She's like, you know, there's nothing to hold on to anymore. I'm done. I don't know if Sam never really gets to that point. I don't think
he's
there's
still
ever
pretty young.
Yeah, but there's also that I think there might be that slight hope that his dad's still around. But I guess the meetup or the I don't know what word I'm trying to say here, but when they reunite, it's very different in each movie.
Yeah, that's true.
Different emotions on them. But yeah, it is interesting to see those parallels as well.
It definitely is. I mean, you like you said, one does tell that story more emotionally than the other. Tron Legacy deals with a smaller version of that concept than Interstellar does, with Murph and Cooper and all of that. And we really see Murph at least kind of get to this point where she feels like her dad kind of abandoned her and was lying to her and all of that. And when it came to Sam and Kevin, he kind of just became more jaded than anything to what happened to his dad, and I think accepted it a lot
just
sooner.
Moved on and just kind of was like he was dead to his dad was
and Murph
dead to him.
kept holding on to that hope. And so when it came to Sam reuniting, he reunited with this more jaded sense and cynical sense than Murph did, because also Murph was literally on her deathbed when she reunited, so that would change things a lot. But we see this great scene. Isn't it the dinner scene in Tron Legacy that really deals with their relationship?
Yeah, it's pretty tense.
It is.
Their meetup. I mean, their initial Sam seeing Kevin for the first time is very emotional. He's very happy to see him, but then, you know, they're sitting there at the dinner table talking, and it's just awkward because, like, neither of them know what to say or what to do. It's been, you know, 20 years or something like that, since they've seen each other, and Kevin's trying to act like all's well while Sam still feels hurt that his dad up and left and doesn't understand why yet. So it's a tense connection with Murph and Cooper. It's like, hey, it's great to see you. I'm dying. You might want to leave because that's just not something you need to go through. I got my family, and that's basically it. You know, you can't really be upset when you've only got a few minutes to spend time with a person, which is kind of deep if you think about it. But
yeah. Interesting. All right, let's shift gears to another movie that's sort of a cult classic, much more loved as a novel than it was as a movie. Correct? Ready?
No,
I thought the movie was pretty well accepted.
Really liked the movie. It was very well received.
Well, let's talk about some of the digital worlds and parental stuff with Tron and Ready Player One. So both of these worlds kind of delve into the, you know, immersive digital environments where characters can escape their reality. In Tron, we have Kevin Flynn, where he becomes trapped in the grid, like we've been talking about. While in Ready Player One, you actually have James Halliday, who's also the creator of that world. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
He leaves behind the Oasis as his legacy. How do these films, I'll start with you, Nate, explore the relationship between the creators of these digital realms and their impact on the lives of their children and their successors on that?
I really think that it deals a lot more with this feeling of they get sucked into their creation so much that they forget about the real world, and this digital world does become their reality at some points. It happened with Halliday. We saw that all happen, and then we see it happen again with, you know, Kevin Flynn. And even though he was trapped there, that wasn't really his choice, but he still was so obsessed with that world that he had to create it. And so we see a lot about that. And I mean, we see a lot with Sam Flynn dealing with his dad, kind of in some ways caring more about the grid than his own son is what it feels like. And I'm sure that, again, that's what Sam felt like was happening. And so, and then we see in Ready Player One, due to Halliday, all of these people will start making the video game their reality, because Halliday kind of put his love into that, of where his ideology of that being his reality, and then everybody else inherited that. Like, the real world was the downtime for people in Ready Player One. That was they slept.
The virtual world of Ready Player One became the existence of everybody. That's what they lived for with it. Okay.
Yeah, it's such an interesting. I'm trying to think of other movies where the concept of a creator becomes almost consumed by his creation.
Jobs,
kind of. Yeah,
except that was in the real world for real.
Maybe to a lesser extent. Isn't even almost
Social Network.
Social, yeah, but isn't even almost like the story of Frankenstein kind of that idea?
Sometimes,
it becomes the thing you're obsessed with creating, becomes such an obsession that it can destroy you.
It destroys you and takes over, screws up your life. And that clearly happens to at least Kevin Flynn. I don't remember if James Halliday really had too many negative repercussions. I mean, he had some regrets that were expressed, like he never settled down with anyone or anything like that. But Kevin Flynn literally lost out on seeing his child grow up and being a part of the world just because he became too engrossed in his ego in a way. I mean, he literally manifested his ego in the grid just to help him make more stuff to feed his ego. That's the whole character of Clue. So it is interesting that concept pops up so much in movies and fiction.
Is Tron just an antivirus?
Tron? Yeah, no, Tron is just
Tron
an
is just an
antivirus. Where'd that come from?
I was just thinking about that. You're talking about creating Clue, and I went back to that scene where he created Clue and was talking with him and then Tron and talking about creating Tron and all that stuff. It just reminded me of that.
Yeah, Tron is just the antivirus.
It's an ADD moment right there.
Very much so.
Just had to have that. There's a story that we've talked about a few times on this podcast in the 5.5 years that we've been doing it. Star Wars.
Oh, yeah.
And really the sequel trilogy. I mean, you could say it begins in The Force Awakens, but it really carries all throughout. All three of those last trilogy of Skywalker saga films. Did I say that correctly? That makes sense. Okay. This idea of inheriting a mantle or passing a mantle on. So in Tron Legacy, it introduces this concept of inheriting a digital empire as Sam kind of becomes the rightful heir to his father's creation. And then in the sequel trilogy, you have Rey, early on discovering her Force-sensitive abilities, and then moving through this in The Last Jedi, interacting with Luke Skywalker and then coming to the point where Luke is no longer there and moving into the Rise of Skywalker, being the one to kind of carry on the legacy of the Jedi, and then having to deal with all of the ramifications of finding out that she's I guess we call her the granddaughter of Palpatine. I mean, that's the easiest way to explain it without getting into some of the weird storylines with that. But I'm curious, I'll start with you, Sam. How did these two films, Tron Legacy, and then I guess not films, but stories, the Tron Legacy and the sequel trilogy, how do they explore the idea of inheriting a powerful legacy and then the weight that it places on the shoulders of that next generation inheriting that?
Well, you don't see it a whole lot in Tron Legacy. It's really more just explored in the beginning. And
it's just the name.
Well, Sam really just kind of ignores it largely. He kind of checks in on the company every so often, sometimes messes with it because they make a stupid decision.
On Scarecrow.
But other than that, we don't know how he handles it after the whole event of the movie and him reuniting with his dad and changing his opinions on his dad. So I wish they would continue that story in the next movie. Obviously, they're not going to if they're casting Jared Leto in the role. But what we do see is it's largely just kind of ignored in Tron Legacy. Well, in the sequels, Rey doesn't really like find out about her true lineage until the last movie. Really just the last half of the last movie.
Not necessarily her true lineage, but this idea of carrying on the legacy of the Jedi is something that she picks up early on with that.
Yeah, she's in
The Last Jedi.
She's hesitant at first, just like any person would be, I think, just like Sam. But she learns that if she's not going to do it, who will? And she really is the one that is best suited for that role. So it's that kind of their refusal of the call kind of mindset until they eventually realize that this is what needs to happen.
Does Sam ever really embrace a legacy at all? At the end of the movie or anything?
Yeah. If we accept the description of Disney's summary, I guess, of the Lightcycle run ride, yes, he does take up that mantle, which it could be canon. I don't see a reason why it couldn't. The only thing that's confusing is how Rinsler is kind of listed as one of your opponents in the ride, but I'm sure they could explain that away. But maybe
they're going to tie that in somehow.
Maybe, but in the articles of them announcing Tron Lightcycle Run, they said that the story is that Sam Flynn, now back from the grid, is now deciding to open up access points into the grid around the world. And that's how they explain, there's one in Shanghai and there's ability to open up more. And so he's now kind of bridging this gap between the real world and the grid, allowing people to access it more easily. And I guess at that point, taking up that legacy of what Kevin Flynn was wanting to do, give the real world a digital world to have. And so he can now have that. And so if that is canon to the story, then yeah, I guess he did. If we don't know that.
Again, wish they would continue that story.
Yeah, so make your argument. I'll start with you, Nate, then you can make it Sam. Make your argument first for if Bob Iger listened to this ending of this episode and you had 30 seconds to convince him to continue Tron Uprising, what would you say to Bob Iger? Why? Not just please, but why?
Yeah, please. But I feel like there is a good amount of demand for it. If you look at anything Tron related, say go to YouTube, look up a Tron Legacy trailer or a video talking about it, or even a Tron Uprising trailer, the comments will say, please give us a season 2 of Tron Uprising. I've seen random posts about Disney shows and people commenting, please, we need a Tron Uprising season 2. There's demand for it. It was a great show. And now is the time to kind of push forward that style of animation. It's popular now. Do it and expand on it. Do what Tron has always done. Push the industry forward when it comes to this. If you can make something that looks absolutely amazing in that type of animation style again, because the first season looked great for back when it came out in like 2012, crazy style and crazy good visuals, and now it can look even better. And so I feel like if you get that story down, you can have a better IP, you can have more demand for people, and there is already enough demand for Tron. Just look at the parks and everything that's going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, I've been seeing videos posted on YouTube of people taking certain shots from Tron and enhancing it into 4K, which they need to make a 4K cut of Tron. It looks incredible. But, there's such demand that people are still making content off of even the movie. And a case for Tron Uprising being made, even just from a business standpoint, is if you time it right to where it helps build up hype for Tron again right before the release or the announcement or something of this new movie, it'll help just kickstart all of that conversation for Tron, because it gets it back into the public mindset to an extent, allowing Tron to be more naturally brought into the conversation. So also we want it, and it was good.
All right, so I'm going to come back to you, Sam, and then I'll finish with you, BB Nate. for all the amazing listeners that are listening to this episode that maybe are not Tron fans, they have not watched Tron Legacy.
And we played the games too, didn't we?
We did
Nate?
play the games.
Tron Legacy, Tron. They have not watched Tron. What's the name of their series again?
Uprising.
I knew it was a U word. You did the Bob Iger business related argument for him, right? For everybody listening that hasn't watched Tron Uprising and Tron Legacy, make a story argument for why they need to check those out.
I'm going to have to defer to Nathan because I do not remember the story as well as I should. I need to give the show a rewatch.
It's a good show.
Parts were starting to click when Nathan was talking about it, like the whole vigilante stuff, but I wouldn't have remembered that on my own. So I'm going to have to phone a friend and defer to Nathan over there.
Shocker that Nathan's going to be the one obsessed with the story.
Wow, I know, right?
Of that.
So make like a case for Tron Legacy and Uprising.
Yes, and why all of our listeners Legacy, need to check it out.
First of all, Legacy, it's just when you watch it, I don't remember Tron. When I watched Legacy, I didn't remember Tron. I still don't remember Tron. I still love Tron Legacy. You don't have to see Tron Legacy. So watch this movie. It has a very inspirational, like, just you feel inspired. I don't know. You just kind of get this really epic story from this movie, and in such a short time. The visuals are better than some of the Marvel movies that come out today. Like Thor: Love and Thunder pales in comparison to a movie that came out in 2009, and it's in a CGI movie the entire time. It's crazy good, and the acting is really well done. Jeff Bridges does an amazing job as Kevin Flynn in some of his scenes, especially the final scene with him in Clue. It's crazy. De-aging.
He's just beside himself.
I know. De-aging is a little off, but it's 2009.
It's
great for 2009. And so
real try.
It's just I can't say too much about the story without spoiling something, because there's a lot that could be spoiled. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it. Now, Tron.
It also has one of my favorite movie scores ever.
It's so good.
I love
it's such
that
a good
score. I listen to that score a lot.
It's a really good score.
That's a Daft Punk score, right?
With
Hans Zimmer consulted.
Direction from consultant
cool.
from Hans Zimmer.
And then Tron Uprising is a show that takes place in between the first Tron and Tron Legacy. Deals a lot with the programs that are in Tron. It follows a program, his day-to-day life. He's a mechanic for Lightcycles and the cars and all this stuff. He basically is hired by people to help fix and reprogram their bikes. It's really cool. But then he starts to take up this mantle of Tron, because he found the original Tron bike. He found that, and there's legends and theories if Tron is still alive or not. And so he takes up this mantle of Tron, or at least tries to be Tron. And kind of in that first episode, that pilot, he fails miserably because the do we really have a name for the bad guy group? I keep forgetting.
Just call them bad guys.
The bad guys, the orange team, the orange people. They just totally wipe him out. But then eventually, towards the middle of the first episode, Tron does make an appearance. And so throughout this entire season, Tron is mentoring Beck. I can't believe I remember that name.
Yeah.
Is mentoring Beck of how to be this legend, how to be Tron.
So
and
the real Tron appears, it starts to mentor.
Yes.
That's almost like Star Wars.
And Beck is starting to cause havoc for the orange people, to the point where Clue starts to make appearances and is starting to fight back.
Yeah.
And there are some crazy episodes. There was one that dealt with a rogue program in a tunnel that was corrupted. It's a crazy episode that makes really no sense and has so many philosophical moments, but it's genuinely a really great episode. And the animation style, I cannot talk enough about how ahead of its time it was. It's amazing, and it has some very beautiful shots.
It's very stylized, but that works nowadays. That's
and
what
the voice
want.
acting is great, and the writing is great, and they need another season. It's frustrating. And if you want to play Tron Evolution, that was a fun game too. The story's fine, but it's fun if you want it.
I am your father.
I couldn't help but reflect on the lessons the Tron films teach about sacrifice and legacy. Just like Kevin Flynn, who made the difficult choice that I can't even begin to imagine having to make, to stay behind in the grid to protect his creation and ensure a better future for others. Sometimes parents have to make choices in the moment that are incredibly tough. Life presents us with situations where we must put the needs of others before our own, even if it means being absent for a while, or in Kevin's case, basically his entire son's childhood. If these selfless acts like this, they shape the legacy that we leave behind, showing our loved ones the depth of our commitment and the importance of making choices that serve a greater purpose. Sacrifices made with love and intention can have a lasting impact, creating a legacy that goes beyond the immediate moment. Thank you for listening to Tatooine Sons, a pop culture podcast. We are part of the Christian Nerd HQ, a collection of amazing people talking about all of the things that you love so much, all the nerd content that you can imagine, interviewing people, sharing devotional insights. It's a pretty special group of people, and we have shows coming out Monday through Friday. On Mondays, it's the Christian Nerds Unite podcast with Ricky Pope. And then, of course, you've got our podcast that comes out on Tuesday, Tatooine Sons, a pop culture podcast. Wednesday is When Fangirling Over Jesus with Ashley Cox releases. Thursdays, it's The Reverend and the Reprobate with crazy interviews. And then Friday, just a collision of crazy conversation with Speaking Nerdy. They are available on wherever you get your podcasts. You can find those. The links are actually in the show notes below to each podcast so that you can just go directly into those and start listening. Also, give us some ratings and reviews. Help other people find out not just about the Christian Nerd HQ, but each individual podcast and getting the word about that out there. You can follow the Christian Nerd HQ at Christian Nerd HQ on all the social platforms, and then follow us while you're there as well. Tatooine Sons, SONS. And then again, share this show with the other Christian nerds in your life and the other nerds in your life. If they love this kind of conversation, we hope that they will engage with us and listen to it. I think that's going to do it for this week. But of course,
may the force be with you always.
This party's over.
I like that Wookiee.
Don't get technical with me.
Joy, please.
Yep, yep.